Hello YouTube and welcome back to the channel outside the target demographic. Today we're going to be doing an unboxing and overview of my Bear Creek Arsenal 20-inch heavy barrel AR upper. Let's get started. As I said, this is a brand new today Bear Creek Arsenal 20-inch heavy barrel AR upper. It's a heavy barrel because it has the same profile all the way through. We'll prove that by taking the hand guards off. And she be so long that doesn't fit under the camera, which is beautiful. So, before we get started on the minute details, let's get out some science boxes. Number one, our calibrated Harbor Freight measuring tape. From tip to tail, we're looking at 29 inches exactly. So tip being the furthest point of the muzzle device to the rear of the charging handle, which is going to be the longest part on this upper. I can guess if we were to remove the muzzle device, it's 27 inches, which I'm just going to confirm. That leaves us with 2 inches, yep, for the muzzle device there. So we're looking 29 inches from the back of the charging handle, which you can see is going to be a little bit further back than the upper itself, and to the furthest edge of the muzzle device. So if we, let's see, the smallest dimension would be, if that muzzle device were removed to the actual back of the bolt carrier group when it's fully seated, is 26.5 inches, for those of you who would like to know. I feel like a lot of the reviews are like, it shoot good and pretty. And as helpful as that is, being able to know exactly how long it is and exactly how heavy it is would be pretty beneficial to those of us who would care to know. So this one is 6 pounds, 7 ounces. So just over 6 pounds, almost 6.5 grams, 2,926. Honestly, I wonder, let me push down. Okay, so it will go past that. I didn't know if it was maxing out at 3,000 kind of thing. So we are looking at over 6 pounds for the upper. So this is the box that came in, and on the inside was an end cap, 2 abrasive pieces of egg crate foam, free advertisement for them, and another end cap. I do like that it's largely free floating, but I feel like we're going to see, and I don't know how well it'll show up on camera, but as we look through, I feel like there's a couple of micro scratches on here that I would attribute to that egg crate foam. You can see as well some grease, oil that's inconsistently smeared across this. I don't know. You can also see pretty aggressively right here, it's almost stippling, and you can hear. It's quite rough. Not very endearing with that. A little bit more scruffy, looks to be oily. So handguards, not great. Imperfection right there, quite obvious, has a lip to it. I can get my fingernail stuck under there. Not sharp, but it is proud. So we do have that. We have our front sight marked with up. It is marked with an F. So that means that it is going to have a taller front sight post, and that's going to allow for a taller rear sight, which means that it has a removable carry handle, which is mounted to the top flat rail. So due to the fact that, and you can even see the line where this rail was mounted, that's already eating up, call that a, ½ inch, which is raising this sight a ½ inch more than the typical front sight would need to be. So that F denotes that it is a taller front sight post. I don't know if you noticed, this one was already almost a full rotation loose. So that had some wobble to it. Always check to make sure that everything is as tight as it should be whenever you get in an upper or a lower. So I'm not seeing any kind of machining marks or anything. I'm seeing a surplus of grease, oil, whatever that is. Some very slight scuffs. Honestly, I do have a review on a Palmetto State Armory 11.5 inch upper. It had a bunch of almost sandpapery scratches on the outside of the dust cover. This one looks mint, which is nice. So as we continue through, I'm not really seeing anything super out of whack, quite greasy, better than being too dry, I suppose. That had some squigglies there, but it appears to have been a hair. So we do have 5.56 NATO with a twist rate of 1 in 7. So there's your 1 in 7. And there is your 5.56. So this will safely fire .223 caliber and or 5.56 millimeter. They are the equivalent dimensions, I believe. Do your own research. The .223 is supposed to be a lower pressure, marginally. Some people are more concerned about that than others. We do have right here a little nick. I can't really get my fingernail to catch on it. I don't, you could probably see if it were to focus. Some very, very fine machining marks, and you can hear when I rub my finger across it that some very fine tooling marks from a lathe or something. Honestly, I kind of like that. And it looks like they may have done it on purpose because this part is smooth versus this part, which isn't. To me, and I've always wondered why they haven't done this, and I'm a ignorant consumer, so I'm sure there's a scientific reason. Typically, a barrel will be a smooth cylinder, right? And you could have fluting of some type. I never understood why they didn't put any kind of ribbing on it, which would give you more surface area, which would give you better heat dissipation. And at some small amount, I would imagine that that's what that's going to do. So kudos there. This appears to be a custom birdcage-ish thing. You have a, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have 6 cuts all the way around versus an A2 birdcage. Birdcage is more of a compensator than a dissipator. This one's going to blow the fireball, the concussion, the sound, the flame, burnt gunpowder, debris, all that stuff in all directions. Versus a birdcage is essentially the bottom is solid and only the cuts on top are exposed. What that's going to do is when you fire and the bullet is about here, the gases are going to vent up, which is going to help with muzzle rise and recoil. It's going to propel the gun downwards as the gun is recoiling backwards, and it's going to help mitigate and allow you to do faster follow-up shots instead of having it recoiling around everywhere. With this one, with it being open in 360 degrees, if you're laying prone, if you're firing right over the ground on a bipod or tripod or on a rucksack, what have you, when you fire, this is going to hit the ground and blow up all that dirt and gravel and rock and grass and everything. It's going to both draw attention, give away your position, and blow a bunch of crap into your face that maybe you weren't anticipating. So, seems easy enough to come off. This one has a hexagonal facing at the back, so getting a wrench on there to wrench it off should not be too difficult. I will be upgrading that to to my tried and true linear compensator, and you will see that in the 11.5-inch AR upper video I had. But you can see here, let me see if I can get the lighting. So you got a couple of, I don't know, they're not scratches, imperfections in the finish. I don't know. If I were to use this oil and smear it, it becomes less noticeable. So maybe it's just very, very fine dry spots. I don't know. So for the price paid, I want to say they're usually like $450, something like that. I'd be a little upset with, again, the condition of the grip here if I were to have paid full price. Luckily, I've been watching this for a while, and they put it on sale for $199. So I was able to get it for $208 shipped, which is very, very nice price. And it will complete a A2 stocked lower that I have and make an equivalent to an M16 A3 or A4 on a relatively cheap price point. So did a quick wipe down. I don't want to be too aggressive and scrub this. Paper towel has paper in common with sandpaper and can be quite abrasive. So I'm using it to sop up the oil, not to scratch and grind away the finish there, but to show you that it is a little dirty. And then let's see if the handguard cleans up at all. I imagine it won't. So maybe a little bit here. We do still have those spots. So I guess the solution there would be when I oil the exterior of this guy, I'll just make sure that I oil that plastic as well, and I'm sure it will go away with a couple of oilings or be less prominent anyways. So that's that. The next thing we'll do, the swivel looks pretty good. Looks like they flared out the other end of the pin. So it is a free floating but not rotating sling mount there. The sight has two good pins. You do not feel any wobble. You have a bayonet mount for those who care or have bayonets. I do not, and I will not. Everything seems to be pretty decent. Before we get into the internals, let's go ahead and get on the externals. So I'm gonna, that was quite easy. I do like that. All right, so we have our Chungus. Jesus. So what you'll do is you have your delta ring here, and this is spring loaded. Okay. So what I did is I stood this up on the tail end. I pulled down on the delta ring. That allowed me to slip the notches, the grooves out, and then slide the handguard off. And now we know why this thing weighs so much. So we have like this. This is my first 20-inch you got a bit of a seesaw action going there. So this has a little bit of deformation to it, it seems like. Again, data point of 1, I would assume these would sit flush, and they do if I squeeze them down together. But if I squeeze just this side, I got a little bit of flappage here. If I do the other side, I have some flappage, so seems to be uneven there. We have a heat shield on both ends. The heat shield appears to be uniform. And if I'm being anal retentive, which is what I do, you'll notice this is not straight. We got a curve here, which is not the same as this one. This one seems to be a lot more consistent, and I'm seeing that on both of them. So they're consistently inconsistent for what that's worth. This one has a quite prominent bend right here versus the relative straightness of the rest. This one appears to be relatively straight, a little bit of bowing, but no sudden crease like this one does. You know, whatever for the price paid. Full price, I'd be a little upset. Otherwise, not so much. We do have some metal flakes in there. So, all in all, it looks like we have a tab here that should be held in place by this post. And I would say the whole thing is shifted rearward. This one is only barely being held by that plastic tab versus like maybe this one, where that metal tab is, you know, 3/4 of the way this is engaging versus this one is very much hanging off the edge. And you'll notice too, these circles are not concentric. So you have a metal cut here, and then you have a circular cut here, and you can see clearly the metal is overhanging. So I would say this is mistimed, is what I'll call it. I was able to just, with my 2 fingers, put them into the cheese grater slicing mechanism there, push forward, and now I do not have any kind of overhang. It does look a little bit better. I believe that it is less so the case here, but we do still have it. You can see there's quite a bit of debris there, so this is relatively clean. Got a little bit of dirt, metal shavings. Better to get it out now before start shooting and start wondering, oh my god, is my barrel falling apart? So I'm going to push both of those up. We now have concentric lined up circle with circle, so that's all right. We're looking at a heavy barrel, and man, is that thick boy. Let's see. Get this and this and this out of the way. Don't think that's going to work too well, but we will try it. So I'm going to stand that up right. I mean, it's an inch diameter. So we have a 1-inch diameter from the chamber to the rear of the front sight post, rear of the front. That's fun. And then we step it down, and you can see here clearly, this is a smaller diameter than this. We're looking at more of a 3/4 inch. About 3/4 inch. So very heavy diameter for a heavy barrel. The more metal you have, the more energy density it can absorb. So the higher the round count you can do before you start having, or should, asterisk, start having deviations in your grouping opening up. A warmer barrel, a thinner hot barrel is more likely to lose its stiffness, I suppose. And you're going to get a little bit of a wider grouping with sustained fire versus a heavier barrel, like machine guns will typically have, probably heavier than this, a substantially thicker, heavier barrel, and that means that there's more metal to absorb more heat and dissipate that heat faster than a smaller profile barrel, which will help with sustained fire and maintaining accuracy and functionality. So Not designed to be light. We put it on the science box there. It said 6.5 pounds. I believe it. Does have quite a bit of heft to it. But they weren't lying about it being a heavy barrel. So you'll notice you have your upper. You have your chamber, which is going to be built into the back of the barrel. The barrel is going to be the thick black piece of steel here. And then you have this stainless, shiny piece of steel. So the way a AR platform rifle functions is you have a projectile here. It will be pushed in with the bolt carrier group into the beginning of the barrel, into your chamber. When the firing pin hits the back of the projectile, igniting the primer, it will ignite the gunpowder. As that gunpowder burns, it's not a sudden explosion, it's a slow burn. Well, slow, hundreds of milliseconds burn. What that's going to do is it's going to slowly start accelerating that projectile down the barrel. As I stated in my 11.5-inch AR upper video, go ahead and watch that. The same car, with the same gas, with the same tires, same conditions, ambient, no snow, blah, blah, blah. How fast can you get your car going in 1,000 feet? 70, 80 miles an hour, right? How fast can you get your car going in 100 feet? Second gear, 20 miles an hour, right? So it's not so much the potency of gasoline or how, boosted your car is. It's how much time do you have to get that car accelerating. We have the same thing here. If you have a 11.5-inch barrel, you're going to have almost 1/2 the amount of time in the barrel to inert some of the energy from the gunpowder into accelerating that hunk of metal. So the longer your flight line, the faster you'll be able to get up to speed, and the faster that speed's going to be. So as that projectile accelerates, typically, let's say it's an 11-inch, we're going to be about here. So the end of your barrel would be essentially where the beginning of your gas tube, this stainless steel guy here, your gas tube starts. So you'd probably be more like here on the 11.5-inch. All that to say, as soon as your bullet passes this point, as soon as your bullet passes this point, there's actually a hole drilled into the top of the barrel. And that hole is going to be your gas block. The gas block is a hole into the barrel, and as your projectile passes this point, as soon as it is here, it is essentially in that, if you were to take a picture in that frozen period of time, it is now a cork, a blockage, a stoppage in that barrel. The only place that gas has to go is up and back. So the majority of the gunpowder will have burned at this point. You'll have your highest pressures at this point. As soon as you pass here, those pressures are going to be diverted rearward, and some of it will continue pushing your projectile. The gases that travel rearward are going to kick into the gas key of your bolt carrier. So you can see that's essentially a tube. It's almost the same diameter as your gas tube. And all those gases are going to blow into that tube. The gases will continue into the bolt carrier. It will blow out these two holes. And then a couple milliseconds later, the bolt carrier will start traveling rearward as the gases have pushed it rearward just as it's pushing the projectile out. It will travel rearward, compress a spring. That spring will push it forward, and it will lock back up and pick up a new cartridge. The benefit with a 20-inch barrel is you have a much longer gas tube system, which is going to give you more consistent, lower pressure gases engaging your impingement system. The impingement system is the gas blowing into this key. It's the mechanism that allows this to function. So you're going to have more reliability, higher consistency with your longer gas tube. Versus, again, if you have a smaller barrel, you're going to have a substantially smaller gas tube system, and you're going to be putting substantially higher, because now we're picking off gases here versus gases here. You're going to be beating and jackhammering the internal mechanisms versus the much smoother, lighter recoiling, heavier 20-inch longer rifle system. So I have not had a 20-inch. I have an 18-inch, so I imagine it'd be about the same. But while we have it out, we have our bolt carrier group. Seems non-standard, I would say. So looking here quickly, we have kind of a 12-sided, whatever that would be. So typically your bolt carrier group is going to be a round piece of bar stock, just like this. So you're going to be round like a pipe all the way through, and that would continue up to your front. This one has sides to it, almost like it's a 12-sided or 14-sided dice kind of thing. So that's not standardized. The screws look to be pinned, which is good. I don't like how much that firing pin moved. Okay, it's retained. We do have a little bit of oil on here, which I feel like is more oil than the Palmetto State Armory from the 11.5-inch video came in at. So kind of nice. Remove a little bit of that. Okay. Other than that, I don't really see any tooling marks or anything of concern. So you have your gas port there. That's kind of sluggish, but I'll lube that later on with my concoction from the 11.5-inch video. So I'm going to tear this apart. Maybe. We have a retaining pin across the back here. So took a clothespin and I pushed into here to get it to stick out enough that I was able to get the corner up in there to pull it free. These are still oily and greasy, and this started out as a white Fiskars cutting board, and I would like to maintain that as long as possible. So as soon as I pull out that retaining pin, the firing pin, which has a far superior job, jumps right out. That allows me to rotate this block. I can pull it out, which allows me to pull my bolt. So I have my bolt carrier, my bolt, my firing pin, retaining pin, and lock. I'm not sure what it's called, honestly, but I do know that it's quite oily, which is good. So they did oil it. I add my own stuff to it, but at very least that will help mitigate corrosion and whatnot for however long it sits on a shelf and takes to get shipped to you. I do not see any peening or angle or bend or misalignment on the firing pin. Everything looks good there. This guy, not too much to it. Basically, as this sits in there, it allows the firing pin to slide through. So you want to make sure that your firing pin can slide through, which it does. The bolt, it has a MPI, magnetic testing, is my understanding on that. So my understanding is they will proof it with a 70 PSI overloaded pressure cartridge. Standard 556 chamber pressure, I believe, is in the neighborhood of 55,000 pounds per square inch. They'll load it with a 70,000, so you're giving it, what, 20 30% higher pressure rating, and then they will do some kind of magnetic test on it and see if there's any damage or whatnot. That was grandfather clock, by the way. Everyone should own one. Past that, we have that is the cuckoo clock. Everyone should own one. We have our ejector, which is the little plunger right there. If I take my firing pin, that should be under spring tension, and boy is it. All right, so it does retract. That seems excessive, but okay. And then this is the extractor claw, and that will act as a claw like this. When it picks up a cartridge, it will hook onto the rim, and then when it ejects it, it will grab that rim and pull, and that's what's going to kick out your empty casing. So I want to make sure that there's some spring tension there, and if you look, it is wobbling, it is seesawing. So there is a spring behind there. I really don't feel like pulling a pin to confirm it, but I can push on the other end of the seesaw and see that it does teeter-totter. So we are good there. There should be 3 gas rings, which there are. We have 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 hole. We do not want those 3 lined up. So if anything, if you could set 1 at noon, 1 at 4, and 1 at 7, something like that, so they do not line up and allow gases to blow by. So that looks good. I want to make sure. Ooh, that is okay. Well, maybe those rings needed to line up correctly. It does. It is tight. It does move, so that's fine. Let me go ahead and while I'm here, I guess I'll go ahead and lube it. So my homemade concoction here, mixture of synthetic grease and synthetic motor oil to the consistency of almost honey. And I'll just, while we're here. So one thing I've been told to look for from the School of the American Rifle YouTube channel recommended is he teaches students how to build and gunsmith, test, confirm, manufacturing stuffs on ARs. He says to make sure that your port is open. So when I blow through it, it does allow air through. You can also use a zip tie and slide it through there, and you'll see it start blocking this hole coming from the top, of course. But that is open, which is what we want. So I'm going to excessively grease that because I'm only greasing one of the 2 surfaces now by spinning it, and that does spin more than I'm flicking it. It does about 3/4 of a rotation per flick. So that is lubing the inside. So I'm going to do that a couple times. Okay. And then you're going to want your extractor lug at the 11 o'clock position. Okay. The odd lug out at the 11 o'clock position. And that's going to line up this hole right here. That's going to allow you to drop in this guy, which is now dry. So I'm going to grease that up as well, including trying to get some inside the hole. Giggity. Okay, so now you may have to slide it around a little bit to get that lined up. Oh, right. So I need to turn it horizontally and then rotate it vertically to get that in. Okay. Firing pin goes in next. You can either put it in through here or you can drop it through the top. I do not have a great deal of success through the top. That one went okay. So you'll notice, oh, you know what? I should probably grease that while I'm here as well. Okay. Gonna drop that through. As soon as it drops through, you can see it sitting a little proud. It actually needs to be pushed in so you do not see or barely see that cap. And then you're going to push your locking pin through it. And I don't know how well you can tell. So what you're going to be doing is when this is sitting in there, it's going to be sitting like this. That hole lines up where this pin can come through, and you're going to be resting the pin up against the back side of the firing pin. And that's going to prevent the pin from traveling rearward. So you're going to be restricting its travel. I find it much easier to just put it in that way. So you want that all the way in. You want to put the pin in, and then we want to confirm that we got it correct. There we go. Okay, so that is in. What I'm going to try and do is grab that firing pin and try pulling it back. I cannot, which tells me my cross pin is holding it in place. The firing pin does move forward, and it does it quite easily. If you look at your bolt right here, when I push forward, you can see that firing pin moves. And even better, even under its own minuscule weight, when I move my finger under its own weight due to the generous amount of lube I provided, it drops free. So that is ideal. That is moving as well. I am going to lube the exterior of this before I put it in. But I am going to inspect the interior first. So we have our charging handle. Charging handle seems okay. I don't see any tooling marks or anything. We're going to lube that as well. Looking at the inside here, I do see what I'd call a dry line. What I would call a dry line along the top there. Superficial. As soon as I lube up the charging handle, I imagine that will go away. I don't see any broken anything, which is good. If I look at my feed ramps, they seem all right. They look like they are M4 feed ramps. They continue into the black receiver a little bit. These two ears, these two cuts, yeah, it was just the angle. So that looks all right. Next, I'm not going to be able to show you due to the length of the barrel, but I'm just looking right down the bore, and I can see that there is rifling and that it is a little bit dirty, but no obstructions or shinier parts more than others kind of thing. So we are good there. Gonna go ahead and kill that because that's annoyingly bright and blue for some reason. I don't know. I'd rather a neutral color flashlight, but that's what we got. So I'm gonna do a little bit here, as well as a little bit on the inside. The gas key here is going to be sliding inside the charging handle, so I do want that to be a little lubed as well. For those of you who don't know, this is going to sit like this, and that's going to be what you manipulate to get the bolt carrier to come back and go forward. And then there is a hole right here That's going to allow the gas key to be lined up, and that's going to, the gas key is beveled almost in a funnel shape right on the edge there. And that bevel is going to allow it to seat on the gas tube. And that's what's going to give it a tight enough seal that when the gases blow back, it will blow the bolt carrier open. I have S24 marking on the rear of the upper. I don't know what that is. I'm going to leave that about there. And then apply a little bit of lube to your bolt carrier group. You'll notice, for those of you first time or learning, welcome, we have some fish scale cuts, grooves here. That is for your forward assist. The forward assist is never to be used, but I will show you. So again, you have your gas key here. We're going to drop that into the groove of the charging handle. She's snug. Okay, so that didn't go in because this lug is not in line with the gas key. So I'm going to pull my bolt out, and that just moved the locking key there in line. And now that's going to allow the bolt carrier to seat. Okay, so back to the fish scales. There's less of the micro ribbing that we had up front, but you could hear that there was some. So there is on the side a forward assist. And what that's going to do, if I do not go fully into battery, so this is in battery, it's completely closed, it's completely locked up, it's ready to fire. If there were a cartridge, which there is not, if I pull this back, you can see I am out of battery. I have light right here. It is not all the way forward. If I pulled the trigger, it would not function. If I use the forward assist and push it, push it, push it, push it, or more appropriately, smack it, it will force the bolt carrier forward. It is a forward assist. I hear very, very bad things about using it. If your gun jammed, the last thing you need to do is force the obstruction into your chamber and locking up your gun. I believe the Army asked for that. Maybe it was the Marines, I forget. The original M16A1 was called the smooth side. It did not have the forward assist, but it seems to be a standard anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe up some of the oil here. I will go ahead and oil the exterior when I'm done, so it really doesn't matter. The more oil and grease is on your barrel, that's the hot bit. So that's going to cook off and smell and splatter and blah blah. So try and get that off. While we're here, let's go ahead and put on our hand guards. So I'm going to line up the front with this triangular shield, and then I'm going to pull rearward, get that lined up and release. That's going to hold the bottom in place. We're going to do the same for the top. So we're going to line up the closest to your front sight post first. I'm going to pull back on that delta ring. I mean, 10 pounds of pressure, it's not much. Okay, and you can see there's a little slot here on both sides, so it doesn't matter which one you use. That will line up with your gas tube, allow it to travel through. So there is my hand guards. The last thing we have is one of the reasons I bought this, the removable rear sight. So we can adjust for different yardage. This will adjust your windage and elevation. Your windage, which way does the wind affect a bullet? Is it up and down? Not so much. Is it left and right? Yes. So your windage will adjust your left and right of where your projectile is going to hit. And then your elevation will adjust the up and down, the height of where it's hitting. So the A3 and A4 removable, we got quite a bit of oil here. Removable carry handle sight will give you a carry handle and will give you your rear sight. So again, this was loose in the box, not super comforting, but just loosen these up. Put your forward-most one furthest from the shooter, closest to the barrel one, in the closest to the barrel groove. Okay. Get that started, get that started. Get it tighter, and then I'll come back with a Phillips and tighten both of those down. But what you have is a carry handle, and with the weight of your lower end stock, this will actually be relatively centered. With this one, due to the sheer weight of the barrel, it's going to be a little forward heavy. But you do have a carry handle. You do have a mount right here that you can pass a screw through, and you could put a rail up here, and it allows you to put a red dot sight or a low powered optic or a flashlight or an EOTech or whatever you want. They also have a gooseneck mount, which will connect here, come down and stay along the top of your handguard, but we'll put a red dot right here, which will allow you to co-witness your sights. But this one has your lower wheel. This one is set at your 300 and 600 yard setting. And once you have that zeroed, if you look at the top, there's a 4 right there. So if you're shooting at 400 yards, you'd set that to the 4. And that one's your 5. Now I'm probably going to fill those in with white paint to make them a little bit easier to shoot. That one's going to be a notch. And it's a 6 because it is a 300 and 600 yard 0. And what that'll do, if you look at the mind the gap right here, as I rotate that back the other way, that gap is getting smaller and smaller. So what that's going to do is it's physically raising. Now it's completely flush. So it's physically raising this block. By raising this block, it's going to be tilting up the muzzle. And they've already calculated how much of a angle you need in order to essentially lob your shots in at 600 yards versus being a straight flat shot in. And then on the side here, you have your left-right adjustment. Clockwise is going to be moving it to the right. So you can adjust both of those, as well as, I'm not going to be able to tell due to the length of the barrel. Okay, while we are here, it comes with a very small peephole sight for long distance shooting or higher accuracy. And then it flips down to give you a much larger diameter peep sight, ghost ring sight. So we have this large one versus large, peep, large. And it tells you here it's for 0 to 200 yards. You have 0 to 2. So that will get you in the ballpark. It will get you low light, poor eyesight, gross accuracy versus very fine accuracy with the other one. So you have a couple different options there. And then by adjusting this ring, you will physically move this sight to the left or to the right. The one thing I don't care for is Bear Creek Arsenal on the back there. Advertising, I suppose. Every time you bring up the sight to shoot, you'll be reminded what you're shooting. Honestly, I feel like the stampings are not the greatest of quality, but they do give you, you can see across there, a couple of notches, which will coincide with, there's a groove right here. So if I show you the top of this, okay, if I show you the top of that sight, you can clearly see there's a notch right there. Okay, if I were to fold this flat, that notch is going to line up dead center on that grid. So you can put paint there and determine if it has walked to the left or the right, see if you are mechanically zeroed. So that's nice, but it is not the highest of quality of molds, shall we say, but it will serve its purpose. So, okay, what's going on there? You get those quite loose. Quite a bit of oil on the inside there. Really weird place to have it, but okay. It's not even on the threads, it's just on the surface. Not the highest quality castings. You can see inconsistent level, inconsistent surface on that. It's not sharp, it's not serrated, it's not going to cut me, and I wouldn't have seen it if I wasn't OCD. So it's fine for what it is. Okay, and then again, I will make sure that's locked down with Loctite before I shoot it. But that is my unboxing and overview of the Bear Creek Arsenal 20-inch AR upper. For 200 bucks, I'm not disappointed. I feel like it's going to do its purpose. It's not the highest quality, and the price reflects that as well. So I'm a function over fashion kind of guy. If I was interested in impressing people, I wouldn't be buying Bear Creek Arsenal, I don't think. But if it shoots well, which I've seen YouTube videos of guys hitting a steel plate at 500 yards, no problem. I imagine that's just as much the rifle as it is the individual. But I will be putting this on an A2 lower and having a M16 style 20-inch AR upper. So that is the unboxing, overview, disassembly, inspection, lubing, rebuilding, and a little bit of insight on the Bear Creek Arsenal 20-inch heavy barrel AR upper. As always, any questions, comments, concerns you have, leave them in the comments section below. This is outside the target demographic, and I will see you guys in the next video.